I don't think my feelings towards what's happening in Gaza are any different from any Muslim or actually any decent human being, but more so any Muslim. And every time I look at my own child, I can't help but think of the unbearable pictures of those children that are suffering, the countless that have already suffered and the countless that are suffering, and their parents and the bereaved. And it quite literally is paralyzing. This frustration is not the zalim, the shayateen, the killers, the murderers, the massacres of children, the genocidal maniacs. The real frustration is not with them. The real frustration is with ourselves. Why are we so powerless? Why is this happening in front of our eyes? We're making all this noise and it's going on. So actually, if you step back and think about it, the real problem is ourselves. Because you can't get angry at Shaitan. Shaitan's job is to do what he does. But we're supposed to be, and the enemies of Islam, they're going to do what they're going to do. Damage is already done for generations. The damage is done. And tomorrow it might be another country. And tomorrow it might be another location. And already we know the Ummah is on fire in multiple places around the world. So the real question is, what is that track? What's the pathway the Ummah is supposed to be on? It's easy to say, we're not united, our leaders are corrupt. It's, when is the Ummah going to wake up? What in the world does that mean? When is the Ummah going to wake up? We need, unless you and I have a clear agenda in front of us, here's what I need me to do. Here's what I need you to do. There's supposed to be some level of clarity on an agenda, on a unified agenda. Then it shouldn't be difficult for 20% of the world's population to exert their influence and to flex their muscle, because we are that. We're not a small population. I'm not claiming that I have the answer to that question, but I think I have somewhat of the right direction, and I want to share that with you in this step. So first is my own reform. Step 2 is steps towards unification. And then step 3, وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ. Now you're calling to something good, but you're calling as a unified force to something good. And I'm not just giving this like a rhetorical speech. We all have to have taqwa. You've heard about taqwa a billion times. I'm not just saying that. I'm saying I have to look in my family. You have to look in your family. We have to look in our community. We have to look in our culture and say, how much of the Book of Allah do we actually apply in our personal lives before we talk about anybody else? How much of it are we actually living by? So if I want to see for myself, am I living by the word of Allah? Am I observing taqwa of Allah outside of my basic worship, my 5 prayers, Ramadan, Hajj? The first litmus test, easy litmus test, is money matters. Am I involved in riba? Am I giving the inheritance shares? Did I shortchange my sister or my mother or my whoever else on the inheritance? Did I give the mahar? Am I providing the support I'm supposed to provide? The finances that I owe? Am I giving the zakat? Am I paying the loan back? Right? These are all, that's easy litmus test. I can look like I have taqwa. I can pray like I have taqwa. I can talk like I have taqwa, but my financial dealings don't have taqwa. That's a problem. So if I'm going to say for myself and yourself and us as a whole, the hundreds of millions and billions of us, let's start with step 1. At least let's begin here and say, hey, I got to bring taqwa back into my life. The second thing Allah says is, واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا. Let's look at each other. Don't fall into disagreement with each other. And how will you do this? By holding on to Allah's book together. So now what Allah is giving us is a mandate. You and I have to become, I don't have a lighter word to use, you and I have to become obsessed with the Quran together. We have to develop a collective obsession with Allah's book. And that obsession is so powerful that our racial disagreements, our ethnic disagreements, our family disagreements, our fiqh disagreements, our historical disagreements, our national disagreements, they start becoming so small because there's something that binds us that is so powerful. Our overwhelming disagreements and divisions are just a manifestation of how far from our actual alignment with the Quran, and how the Quran is no longer the conversation. The Quran is just a side reference. The Quran is just a book of dala'il from my point of view. Using the Quran to slap each other instead of actually surrendering before the word of Allah together. So instead of the Quran serving my thought, I'm using the Quran to serve my thought. The first problem is taqwa. The second problem is intellectual. The intellectual discourse of the Muslims now must be dictated, mandated, obsessively with the Quran. We have to bring it back into popular conversation. This last week, many of you attended me going through Surah Al-Ma'arij. For many of you, this is the first time you're actually taking the time to study a surah deeply. And as wonderful as that is, isn't that a tragedy? Isn't that a disaster? That the people that call themselves Muslim, the people of this Quran, they can be raised in a Muslim family saying La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and they could be 18, 20, 25, 30, 35 years old, and this is the first time they took the time to think deeply about the Quran like this, or even have the opportunity. Whose fault is that? The kuffar? Did they do this? That's all us. واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا. And that's why this ayah, this is the ayah about brotherhood and about unity. You used to be enemies before this. فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ يعني أَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ بِكِتَابِهِ بِحَبْلِهِ. Quran teaches you how to think, how to understand the world around you. This is Kitabun Mubin. This is Nur. Nur helps you see. Mubin is something that clarifies the world around you. Now, this is a wake-up call for this book is a wake-up call for humanity, but this crisis, I pray, is a wake-up call for the ummah and for every single one of us, that we see ourselves aligned with a very particular agenda, with a very particular focus, simultaneously. And if enough of us have that awakening, if enough of us have that consciousness, wallahi al-azim, we are far too many to think ourselves as weak. We're far too many. You don't need billions to bring about a change. Quran already taught us that. The Seerah already taught us that. You just need enough strong hearts and minds. That's all you need.